Hello, hello! This is Chucky from Collecting for Fun, and today we got a much different review for you. We are going to review this manga series of Les Miserables. Now, I picked this up because I recently watched the musical for the very first time, and I actually did enjoy it. But if you've ever watched the musical, the storyline goes really, really quickly, and I felt that there was a lot of gaps in the story as far as I didn't completely follow everything that was going on. So I wanted to see, hey, maybe I should read the book. Then I found out the book was like almost like 1,500 pages, and I was like, what else comes up? And I stumbled upon this manga series. And I asked my kids, and I said, hey, you guys, if I bought this, would you guys read it? And they said, definitely, because they watched it with me, and they definitely had gaps in their understanding of the story as well. And so here we are. Let's look at this manga series. Now, this manga, Les Miserables, was originally written by Victor Hugo all the way back in 1862, and he's also famous, obviously, for he's got many books, obviously, but his other most famous work is The Hunchback of Notre Dame, written in 1831. And I thought it was kind of ironic that two of his classics were turned into musicals. Obviously, Les Mis, and then you got the Disney animated classic, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. But here we are. So let's have a look at the anime series. So as you see, these are omnibus. So each omnibus, there's four omnibuses, and they each collect 2 volumes. So volume 1 has omnibus 1, I should say, has volume 1 and 2. And each, as you can see, is based on the novel of Victor Hugo. And the story and the art is by Takahiro Arai. So, and you can see the art. So there's Jean Valjean, there's Cosette, and there's Fantine. And this is the first volume. You can see it's pretty thick. That's at least a good inch, maybe a little bit more than an inch thick. And you can see in the back there a little description about Les Mis, about the adaptation. There's the main antagonist, Javert, and then we got the revolutionists there. Okay, well, let's have a look at everything. And so each manga book, you can see how beautiful the art is, typical manga style. The first pages are in each omnibus, or each volume, I should say, is in full color. And then it goes into black and white. But you can see the art in there. And the story at the beginning tells the story of Jean Valjean. And it kind of fleshes out his origin story of like how he ended up in prison, and the story of all his sister that he was helping to take care of her and her kids, and she had several kids. It looks like there was 5 kids, and that's when he couldn't find work because he was a tree cutter, which I don't believe that came across in the play. I might have missed it. And you can see that they were during the slow times in the Depression, there wasn't much opportunity to work because he really wanted to work. And there's a beautiful sequence where he is stealing the bread and then getting captured. And so he was sentenced originally for a short period of time in jail for a few years, but then he tried to escape, and it says he tried to escape 2 or 3 times there, which is why he ended up in jail for 20 years, because I think each time he escaped, or tried to escape, added like 5 years to his sentence or something like that. So obviously coming out of jail, you can see, he's known for his incredible strength, but by the time he gets up, there's Javert branding him with the papers, which he has to declare at each place, which basically makes him a pariah at every place he tries to go. So that is, as I said, it's beautifully illustrated, beautifully written, and so he meets and tells a little bit more about this sorry, let me see, there he is, the nice priest or cardinal that takes him in, and kind of sets him on his path. And it talks about how humble this guy is. He could have been, living in the lavish riches like most of the his contemporaries were. You can see how well they're dressed, and he dressed like a pauper, and it's because he gave all his money away. Like, he donated to all the causes that he cared for, and he lived on very, very little means. And so when you see him in the play for the short sequence, I mean, he didn't have a lot of riches. He only had a few silver items, and obviously the main items he had obviously were the candlesticks. There's Jean Valjean trying to find work, trying to find accommodations, but everyone's paying him very little, because he's a convict, if he gets a job at all, and then not giving him any shelter or even feeding him. So he feels like being in society, and obviously that kind of creates his initial reaction when he finally gets help from this nice gentleman, where he eats all their food, and then when they all go to sleep, he steals all their belongings, all their silver dining plates and the candles and whatnot. And just like in the play, he is caught very quickly by the police. So the story follows very quickly. So you can see through here, he's getting the temptation, and you can see he doesn't want to murder anyone, but he steals the stuff. So this is it follows the story quite well. And you see that he could have condemned him, but he forgave him and gave him everything. And you can see that famous saying where he says, "No, you didn't take the candlesticks." And so it sets Jean Valjean on his path to redemption, which sets off the entire story. So you can see, the first sequence of the play is told, and it's already about half of this volume. And then it starts to talk. This first omnibus also talks about Fantine's story, fleshes that out. There's Jean Valjean starting to come to terms and wanting to, playing devil's advocate in his own head, and that he is wanting to be a better person, and starting that journey. So this is the next volume here, and this story talks about Fantine's journey and how she got her name. So this is a really good story, and so it certainly fleshes out how she came to be in the situation she was. You can see that she was living a very good life initially, being courted by some gentlemen, but then they ended up basically just leaving them in a lurch, and she was already impregnated by their child, and that's basically how she got pregnant with her daughter. And so I'm not going to go through the entire story, because you got to watch the play. But yeah, you can see how beautifully illustrated this is, and basically how she came to be. She had her kids, she was wandering, she saw the kids, these kids playing, and this is how she ended up leaving her daughter with these awful, awful people, and at the hotel, who basically from this point on really ruined her life, because they just kind of milked her for everything that she did. It's really a sad story. It is called Les Miserables for a reason, because it's about misery and the suffering. And I think, although Javert is the main antagonist for Jean Valjean, I think the innkeepers are really to me the core villainy in this whole story, because they're the cause of most of the suffering that occurs. And there's Jean Valjean being redeemed, becoming a very successful businessman here. Eventually they force him to become mayor of the town, And so yeah, you can see how beautiful the art is. Eventually Javert ends up in the town, doesn't recognize Jean Valjean at first, but there is a scene where of the carriage where it crashes, and obviously Jean Valjean has to use his immense strength because no one can help this gentleman, otherwise he would be crushed. So he uses his strength there, lifts the carriage, and starts to make this guy suspicious. It talks about all they're very suspicious. And then again talks about Cosette's journey to madness. She's working fine at the factory, doing well, but then one of these jealous ladies here finds out that she has a kid and throws her out on the street, basically. And basically from there, she just goes into things just go from bad to worse. She cuts off all her hair, eventually pulls out all her teeth, gets really sick, and it's a very sad story. So this, the manga really fleshes out a lot of the story in the Les Miserables play. So that is just voluminous 1 with the volume 1 and 2. I won't spend as much time on the other ones for sake of time, but just to show you the beautiful art again in here. Each of these volumes really fleshes out more of the story. Here's the story of how Jean Valjean came to meet Fantine, saving her from going to prison, her illness, and then eventually, as well as Javert telling Jean Valjean that they got the real Jean Valjean in Paris, and then he's contemplating going through a lot of trials and tribulations about whether or not he wants to save this man or not. So they really flesh out that story. And there's a lot of obstacles because he's kind of way in, if he's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't, because he'll damn the whole city, because he's like one of their, he employs a lot of people. There you go. He says, reveals that he is Jean Valjean. Eventually, and then he makes his way back. Cosette's really sick. Fantine's really sick. She's about to die. She thought he was out trying to get Cosette so she can see him, and she just passes away very shortly there. And then Javert shows up trying to arrest him, and Jean Valjean says, "Not yet," type of thing. He's got to go save Cosette. So actually, this fleshes it out. I think he does end up in jail for a short period of time. Yes, he does. And then during some mission, so this doesn't show up in the play at all, but he is arrested. But on a ship, he saves some people, or a person at least, and then then he jumps overboard, and they think he's dead. So after that, this is the third book, you can see this is back at the hotel where they make Cosette into like basically their version of Cinderella, being the maid for them, and basically treating her so poorly. She's their slave, and Jean Valjean, after everyone thinks he's dead, comes to rescue her. Basically pays them off. So all that whole story is in this manga book here, or this volume here. And then after he has, they're off to Paris eventually. But yeah, so basically this whole story is how he comes to get Cosette from them, how he saves her, ends up at a nunnery. And the guy he saves actually gives him shelter, and the nuns help raise Cosette. And that's basically how they keep under the radar for many, many years. And this story here talks about Marius' story and his journey, where he, how he came to live with his grandpa, and how eventually he learns about his real father, who was worked, or I guess was in the army under Napoleon, and so he learns about him, and that's how he gets interested in the revolution, meets eventually the friends, the fellow revolutionists. So that is this volume here. Third volume goes into more of Marius' story again. This kind of talks about how he first sees Cosette walking with Jean Valjean. He obviously does not know their name. She doesn't know her name for many, like a long time. I think for years. And there you can see Epony all grown up. And they were actually, at this time, where he's staying there, they are actually neighbors living in the same house. And then they just kind of happenstance that those innkeepers, I think his name is Thénardier or something like that, Epony tricks Jean Valjean saying that they're very poor, which they are, but they're basically try to steal money. But he's being a philanthropist, comes over to help, gives them clothes and stuff. And then all the stories intertwine here. Kind of interesting how that works. And Javert happens to be in Paris, so Javert always shows up. He always shows up, right? And so this talks a little bit about the backstory between Eponine. They also talk about this kind of like group of villains here that are trying to steal from Jean Valjean and some others, and then he eventually fights them off, and they end up being arrested by Javert, and Jean Valjean quietly kind of escapes. But this guy does recognize Jean Valjean, so I think that's kind of sets up the story of him going back into hiding. Again, this also kind of lays out, the courtship of Cosette and Marius, how they kind of came together. This story talks about a little bit, so it brightens it up a little bit more. Lays out more of the story there, of what's going on. Kind of all that story in Paris. There's Eponine again. So all in all, if you if you like manga and you enjoyed Les Mis or have any inkling about learning more of what's going on in the story of Les Miserables, there's Eponine's brother who eventually dies during the Revolution. Then if you like manga, I thought this was so interesting. I figured, not a lot of people know about this manga being out there, and I certainly didn't. I only found it by happenstance. It's not that expensive. I mean, this giant thick book you can get for $20 US or $25 Canadian. Sometimes you get it on sale. The last book obviously wraps up the entire story. Again, starts off with color. This one really dives into the revolution, where, the massacre happens, and, how Jean Valjean saves Marius' life, and, Javert being spared during that time by Jean Valjean, questioning his morality. He's kind of damned if he brings him in because he sees that Jean Valjean's become a good man, and he's damned if he doesn't bring him in because he's, his main thing is to serve justice. It also gives a little bit more backstory about Javert. I didn't realize, I don't think it fleshes out in the play, that his parents are both convicts, and that's how kind of his backstory of how he became who he is. Because he was kind of said, hey, you have a choice. You can be like them, or you can, you can enforce the law. So he took that to extreme and enforced the law. So it talks about how Cosette marries Marius, and actually Jean Valjean in the story does attend the wedding and then leaves after. In the musical, it really cuts that part short, and he's not there for the wedding. And then eventually Marinus learns about Jean Valjean being the one that saves them and not just a convict. And it's a beautiful way to end the story. Jean Valjean passing and going off to see all those that passed before him. So beautiful story. If you want to see it in manga form, it is very, very well done, I have to say. And I definitely recommend it if you are looking to get to read a really cool manga, really delve much deeper into the Les Miserables story without having to read a 1500 book and seeing it in nice pictures and full color. So I hope you enjoyed that very brief look at the Les Miserables, the manga. This is Chucky from Collecting for Fun. Again, a little bit different than what I usually do, but I figured, a lot of people love manga. I certainly do, and a lot of people out there certainly do as well. And this is one of those ones that I think a lot of you guys might enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you want to see more manga on the channel or not. And hit that like and subscribe button. We will see you guys so soon. Take care. Bye.